coming up on Bridge City News. The classroom is back in business as thousands of Alberta kids go back to school today. Plus, now that students are back, so are those school speed zones. A reminder from Lethbridge Police to slow down. And dozens of people protest the closure of arches in honor of Overdose Awareness Day.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. It might look a little different this year, but you can't beat that back-to-school feeling. Parents, kids, and teachers have faced uncertainty over the last month about classes beginning, and today all of those questions were put into action. As BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly explains, patience is the key to navigating back to school in a pandemic.
Ludi Meni has 3 kids. Back to school is different this year with the pandemic, forcing Coalbanks Elementary to begin the year with a staggered entry, and only half of the kids starting school today.
I'm normally not an agenda mom, but oh my goodness, with the staggered entry, I have needed to put it all on a calendar to keep everything organized.
Along with social distancing and added sanitation, students are divided into cohorts and will remain in the same classroom. The school board is following the provincial guidelines as they continue to evolve.
There's no plan or manual that we're able to follow. We're kind of building this as we're going, and things are changing daily and things are changing weekly. And so sometimes you're putting the best effort forward into a plan, and then sometimes there's a decision that's being made throughout the province that impacts that plan.
A common theme amongst staff and parents is the virtue of patience.
Patience and flexibility are probably going to be the 2 most important things this year. There's changes are coming. There could be daily, they could be hourly, they could be weekly. We know they're going to come, and we're just going to have to react to them.
We need to be patient, we need to be flexible, and we just need to be cooperative and know that we're going to be making some mistakes, and it's okay.
Making them compassionate and patient as well, I think is going to help make this school year a little bit less stressful for everybody.
The Alberta government's school re-entry plan has implemented a strict stay-at-home policy for any staff, students, or children exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19, even if those symptoms resemble a minor cold. Those individuals are expected to quarantine for 14 days. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Thank you, Ainsley. And now that students are back, so too are those school speed zones. Starting today, school zones have a posted speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, and they'll be enforced on school days from 7:30 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. Lethbridge Police will also be targeting distracted drivers, parking violations, and U-turns. Sergeant Kevin Talbot from the Traffic Response Unit is reminding drivers to be extra cautious when driving through school zones and watch out for children walking through as well.
We just want to remind people now that we have children back in school, and there has been an extended time away from school, so drivers are probably not as used to seeing the kids out in the school zones. So we just want to remind everybody to pay attention to young kids that are on the way to school, either by walking, on their bicycles, getting dropped off in a vehicle or in a bus, and just be mindful of the fact that young kids sometimes don't always pay attention to traffic and that, so take extra precautions to ensure that they don't get injured or killed.
Sergeant Talbot says that photo radar will be ramped up as well in school zones. Alberta's chief medical health officer says an order she made over the weekend was meant to clarify and not confuse. Dr. Dina Hinshaw's order issued Saturday spells out that schools do not have to ensure 2 meters of spacing when students, staff, or visitors are seated at desks or tables. Staff and students in grades 4 through 12 must cover their faces when they're in common areas where physical distancing cannot be maintained, but the rules are eased for classrooms so that masks don't get in the way of communication. Hinshaw says that when 2 meters of spacing can't be achieved in the classroom, students should be seated in rows so that they are less likely to cough or sneeze directly into the face of classmates. COVID-19 is proving to be causing problems as most students across Alberta return to classes this week. Meadows Ridge School in Okotoks, south of Calgary, didn't open as planned today after a staff member was diagnosed with COVID-19. Canyon Meadows School in Calgary was to open as planned today also, but the principal, assistant principal, and administrative secretary were forced into a 14-day quarantine after someone at the school tested positive. The Peace River School Division, northwest of Edmonton, posted a notice on its website saying that it was delaying a return to classes until after Labor Day. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says calls to cut class sizes in half to reduce the risk of COVID-19 are actually proposals to keep schools shut. Kenney says the proposal would cost $4 billion and is not based on reality. He adds that COVID-19 infections in schools are no reason to keep classrooms shut because he's accepted all along that such cases are inevitable. He made the comments after 2 schools reported COVID-19 cases. The province is reporting that there are 164 new cases of COVID-19 today in Alberta, for a total of 1,398 active cases. There have been 241 deaths in total, and more than 9,000 tests have been performed in the lab in the past day. 12,427 people have recovered from the virus. And by the way, it was on this day in 1905 that the Alberta Act was signed and our province was born. To celebrate, the provincial government has officially declared September 1st to be Alberta Day, so happy birthday, Alberta. Yesterday marked International Overdose Awareness Day, a day that aims to raise awareness of overdose and reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths. Gatherings and activities were held around the world, including here in Lethbridge. BCN's Naveen Day was at last night's rally and says that the event served a dual purpose.
Dozens gathered outside City Hall, many carrying signs to show support for International Overdose Awareness Day. After speeches took place to raise awareness of overdose, the rally marched to the now defunct Arches, the former home to Lethbridge's supervised consumption site, which closed its doors the same day.
When we know what needs to be put in place, when we have evidence-based material that shows us what works and what doesn't work, and the fact that our governments won't listen to that, and that we will have more senseless, needless deaths. It's an atrocity to this UCP government.
The site never had any deaths within its doors, and we reversed approximately 130 overdoses every month up until our closure. So now I just ask the community, what now? Where should people go to use drugs? Because we know it's not going to stop.
While the SCS has been replaced with an overdose prevention site, Baudouin says that the mobile site does not meet the needs of the community.
Unfortunately, they only provide injection supervised consumption, and Arches SCS provided also supervised consumption for smoking, for snorting, and for swallowing drugs, which are all safer modes of consumption than injection. So for people who are looking to take better care of themselves through using safer modes of consumption, they no longer have anywhere to go in this community.
According to a 2019 report from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, North America continues to experience the highest drug mortality rate in the world, accounting for 1 in 4 drug-related deaths. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Teresa Tam says an eventual vaccine for the virus that causes COVID-19 will go through rigorous testing in Canada before it's approved here. To make sure that testing is as swift as possible, she says teams of scientists are being assigned to assist at Health Canada.
The vaccine research and development process in usual times takes more than a decade before they are approved for use for Canadians. Canada and the world cannot wait 10 years for COVID-19 vaccine. By the same token, we cannot and will not compromise safety and efficacy. The development and approval of a COVID-19 vaccine for Canadians will build on the existing strengths and experience of Canada's vaccine research and safety review process. The vaccine will be tested extensively among thousands of volunteers. It will meet high standards of safety and efficacy before it is approved for use in Canada.
The Economic Recovery Task Force has opened up a brand new one-stop shop as a way of helping out businesses who have been affected by COVID-19. The shop is meant to be a walk-in or online clinic where businesses can meet and discuss with volunteers to talk about ways in which they can help themselves get back on their feet.
This is a place where people can go and get information and advice and get that from various professionals. So we have a number of different types of advice and advisors that we can pair people up with. And really the idea behind that is that business owners would need, likely in a lot of cases, more than one type of advice, more than one type of help. So we want to be able to offer that all kind of under one roof or through one portal, so to speak.
The shop will be located in the downtown University of Lethbridge Dr. Foster James Penny Building. Is there a potential conflict of interest in the Civic Square project in Coaldale? That's what the Citizens for a Better Coaldale are asking of one member of the Town Council of Coaldale, Brianne Simpson. The group says that Simpson has recused herself from the last 3 council meetings regarding the Civic Square project, and there is a potential for a conflict of interest between her and the project. Jason Beekman, a spokesperson for the Citizens for a Better Coaldale, says that there was hardly any consultation to citizens from Coaldale City Council regarding this new project.
We're just asking questions. There's been a lot of questions asked to us about this conflict of interest. Councillor Simpson has recused herself for pecuniary reasons for the last 3 council meetings when they've discussed the Civic Square. One of the problems we have is the fact that the Civic Square is always discussed in closed sessions, so none of the citizens actually get to see the discussions going on surrounding it. So there's definitely questions when when a town councillor is recusing themselves for pecuniary reasons, and none of us know why. The town won't answer those questions.
Bridge City News reached out to Coaldale Councillor Brianne Simpson, but didn't hear back from her in time for our broadcast deadline. The Prairie Baseball Academy has added 2 new pitching coaches. Rhett Fraser and Dustin Mulliken are no stranger to baseball in Western Canada. Both Fraser and Mulliken are Prairie Baseball alumni and went on to play professionally. Head coach Todd Hubka spoke about the local connection and why hiring the 2 was an easy choice.
Both of them, right? Like Dustin, he played at the highest level you can play at, and so to bring someone of that caliber in to help us coach these kids and develop them and mentor them is unbelievable. And Rhett was that that pit bull dog type mentality that I know that's what he's going to bring to the pitching staff.
Well, I want to show these kids how it is to get to the highest, right? Either pro ball or like a 4-year school. 18 years ago it was phenomenal, and yeah, I'm just happy I'm here again, back.
I can see it going real well. He's obviously played at the highest level. He's played in the major leagues, so he's a great guy for them to be around. I think we'll work together real nicely.
The Prairie Baseball Academy is in its 26th year. The Academy has sent over 200 players onto U.S. college scholarships. Starting today, the city will be expanding its spectator access to city arenas. A maximum of 50 spectators will be permitted for each ice rink session. Spectators must wear a mask at all times inside the arena facilities and maintain social distancing where possible. Spectators will be assigned rotating zones for each session so the unused area can be cleaned. The ice arenas at ATB Center and Nicholas Sharon are currently open. The remaining arenas are tentatively scheduled to reopen later this month. Public skating is to resume in October. The government has hired an Ottawa-based consulting firm to investigate allegations of a toxic work environment at Rideau Hall. Quintet Consulting will interview current and former employees in the office of Governor General Julie Payette. Some have accused Payette of belittling and publicly humiliating them, reducing some to tears and prompting others to quit. The firm will also meet with Payette as it tries to determine what behaviors create concerns of a toxic workplace and who was involved. Payette has stated that she is deeply concerned about the allegations. The province of Ontario's 4 major teachers' unions said today that they will file complaints with Ontario's Labour Board, alleging that Ontario's school reopening plan violates the province's workplace safety laws. Premier Doug Ford urged the unions to work with the government on its plan.
I just can't understand. You know, we've worked with every organization, every labor organization, every single group in the entire country, at all different political stripes. And every single one, 99.9% of everyone's getting along, except there's one group. It's the teachers union. Why? I'll work with you. Everything that you've wanted, we've given you. We've put $1.6 billion into education, more than anyone, more than anywhere in the country, in any ministry. You wanted ventilation, we got ventilation. You wanted more money for teachers, we got more money for the teachers. We went up and got the reserves. We have more cleaning. We basically covered every single list. And I'm just asking, just once, for your cooperation.
The unrest we've seen over the past week in Wisconsin and Portland prompted U.S. President Donald Trump to tweet about sending in federal law enforcement and the National Guard to restore, quote, law and order. We asked our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari to weigh in during a recent interview, and she had this to say.
Donald Trump said in his acceptance speech for the nomination a few nights ago that if these leaders, local or governors and mayors and such, if they would allow for the federal government to help them, they would take out these protests in a matter of hours. I mean, nobody wants the National Guard coming through their cities. I know here in Los Angeles we had to have that happen in the aftermath of the Floyd protests. Nobody wants that, but at the same time, nobody wants senseless deaths like this one. Nobody wants, shattered businesses, especially in the aftermath of COVID, when so many people are suffering economically and otherwise.
Catch my full interview with U.S. correspondent Lisa Daftari coming up right after Business News. Well, it might be September, but we're still going to see temperatures soaring up around 30 degrees this week. We'll have a full look at the forecast coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to our Lethbridge weather. Sunny and windy over the next couple of days. This evening, clearing skies. We're going to see a westerly wind pushing those gusts into 70 kilometers per hour. Overnight low tonight, 14 degrees. Into tomorrow, 25 is the high, a mix of sun and cloud. And we're going to be seeing some wind gusts as well, up to 60 km per hour at times. Overnight low on our Tuesday night, or Wednesday night rather, 6 degrees. And then as we get into the rest of the week, mainly sunny skies for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, high of 25, pushing up to 29 and all the way to 32 degrees on Saturday. So it looks like summer isn't quite over yet. 15 degrees on Sunday, quite a different story there. And we could see 60% chance of showers as well. But 13 is the high for Monday with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, as we see those temperatures rise and lower, we're seeing that the almanac average for this time of year is 24 degrees, 23 rather. So we're certainly climbing a lot higher than that towards the end of this week. 8 degrees is our average low. 37 was the high temperature back in 1967, and 1 degree was the low back in 1975. 6:47 a.m. is when the sun rose this morning, and our sunset for this Tuesday evening, 8:15 p.m. So let's take a look at what's happening across the rest of the country. Into tomorrow, we're going to see lots of sunshine on the west coast. Victoria's high tomorrow at 21 degrees. Same thing for Vancouver. Vancouver could see increasing clouds though. Now, we have a chance of showers in Calgary tomorrow. 19 is the high. 17 the high only in Edmonton. Now, Edmonton could see a risk of some thunderstorms. They could see up to 10 millimeters of rain as well. Same thing for Saskatoon here. Chance of showers and thunderstorms. Could see 5 millimeters of rain and 5 to 10 millimeters of rain in Regina tomorrow with a high of 19. Over in the central Canada area, 26 is the high for Toronto. Risk of thunderstorms, same thing for Ottawa with a high of 25. Chance of rain tomorrow, 40% chance in Montreal with a high of 25. As we look further east into the Maritimes, we're going to see quite a bit difference of weather here. Lots of clear skies, lots of sunshine compared to the rest of the rainy country. Fredericton's high 23, 22 the high in Charlottetown. 20 is the high for both Halifax and St. John's, Newfoundland. And there you go, that is your weather. Video conferencing company Zoom is now worth more than Ford and General Motors combined. The stock shot up 33% in the morning trading on a quarterly report that blew past Wall Street forecasts. The jump in its share price pushed Zoom's market value to nearly $122 billion. The company's revenue more than quadrupled from the same time last year to $663.5 million. Statistics Canada is developing an online tool that will let you see the change in prices for the things you buy. The idea is to create a consumer price index unique to you alone that will let you see your spending patterns in the data the agency collects. The online tool is intended to address a gap between official measurements of inflation and our own price perceptions during the pandemic. More than 50 Black former McDonald's franchise owners are suing the burger chain for discrimination. In a federal lawsuit filed today in Chicago, the 52 plaintiffs say McDonald's steered them to the less profitable restaurants and didn't give them the same support and opportunities given white franchisees. The franchisees owned 200 U.S. stores before being forced to sell them over the last decade. They're seeking compensation of $4 to $5 million per store. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 130 points to 16,644. The Dow was up 215 points to 28,645. The S&P 500 was up 2634 to 3526. The Nasdaq was up 164.21 to 11,939. Oil was up 37 cents to $42.98 per barrel. Natural gas was down 11 cents to $2.52. Gold was up 20 cents to $19.70 an ounce. Silver was unchanged at $28.11 an ounce. Wheat is at $215 per metric ton. Barley is at $203. Canola is at $499. And corn is at $238 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 18 cents to $105.48. Feeder cattle were up 3 cents to $140.65. Lean hogs were up $1.43 to $53.03, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly to $76.53 US.
And recapping one of our top stories today, September 1st has marked another first, the first day of school for many students across the province as they headed back to class today. Parents, kids, and teachers have faced uncertainty over the last month about classes beginning, and today, all of those questions were put into action. And coming up after the break, some residents in Kenosha, Wisconsin say Donald Trump's visit today is all about his re-election and not about healing the community following the shooting of Jacob Blake. We speak with U.S. correspondent Lisa Daftari, who weighs in on the topic. But first, here's a look at what's happening in your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Bring your lunch and enjoy beautiful live music at the same time. Come out September 4th to the first Friday Lunch and Listen concert series featuring performances by the University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music in Cass's Community Room beginning 12:15 p.m. and ending at 1. First Friday events are an initiative brought to you by the Heart of Our City Committee. For a full listing of upcoming events, visit firstfridaylethbridge.com. 2020 marks the 40th anniversary of Terry Fox's Marathon of Hope, which will be held virtually on Sunday, September 20th. Support a worthy cause your way by registering as an individual, a family, or virtual team. To find out more, visit terryfox.ca. Get to know your city and take part in the Lethbridge Scavenger Hunt. Download the Let's Roam Scavenger Hunt app, lace up your walking shoes, and head out with family to discover the best landmarks in Lethbridge. Put your navigation skills to the test while enjoying the journey at your own pace. No reservations, no tour guides, and fun for all ages. Visit letsroam.com/scavenger hunt. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
More violence in the U.S. over the weekend, but this time stemming from a President Trump rally. Saturday's shooting in Portland, Oregon occurred near clashes between Trump supporters and counter-protesters after a Trump 2020 cruise rally that happened earlier in the day. The shooting victim lost his life. Joining me now from Los Angeles to discuss this is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
So, Lisa, can you weigh in on the incident over the weekend? What's the latest update?
Interesting because I do cover foreign affairs and national security, and, I'm usually looking at parts of the Middle East and, where all the turmoil is. And now it's all here in the United States. The world is looking right here at the United States and probably shaking their heads just like you did right now and wondering, where is this going to go? I mean, 2020 has brought on so much chaos in every sense of the word, in terms of the pandemic, in terms of internal strife here in this country. And we are only getting more scared as we go closer to the election. I mean, what will happen if Trump wins? What will happen if Trump loses? And you look at these rallies that are supposed to be peaceful rallies, and we have gone so far back in terms of what happened to peaceful demonstration, what happened to diplomacy, what happened to, talking it out and really respecting one another. It just has become, pebbles and bam bam, and people using excessive force, looting, rioting, protesting to get their points across. And, it begs the question, what forces are behind these protests and the looting and the rioting, and why are they so organized? Why are they so violent? And why do they have certain politicians backing them, justifying them? This is really unprecedented when you have elected officials justifying, the violence, the looting, the rioting, and we pray for better days, more peaceful days, but this has just gone too far.
100%. It's both shocking and heartbreaking. So this man that was shot, he was a Trump supporter, right?
Yes, and he actually was a visible one. I mean, he had a public platform. He was the leader of a pro-Trump group, and a lot of people mourning his death today, both symbolically and personally. Symbolically because he was someone who had dedicated his life to politics, to defending his candidate and to his political party, and his life should not be taken for that reason. And obviously, as a nation, we mourn this because this is just, it's senseless. It's completely senseless.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're hearing that he was from a group called Patriot Prayer. Are you familiar with that group? What is it exactly?
Yeah, it's one of these it's a right-wing group. I think people in the media will illustrate it as, far right, radical right. These are, little descriptive words that they give to groups that they probably don't agree with here in the mainstream media that completely lean left. We're used to that by now. But, again, a group that was probably less visible to the ordinary person, but to those who are, affiliated with, the GOP and the underground groups. He was someone who was important, and he had a social media profile, and again, many people mourning his death today.
Okay. Now, there have been protests in Portland for over 90 days and nights since the death of George Floyd back in Minneapolis back in May, on May 25th. But right now it appears that the mayor of Portland and President Trump are clashing. And I think this incident over the weekend kind of came to a head with that.
Yes, and same thing goes for Wisconsin. It looks like, leaders are finding themselves in a position where if they side with Donald Trump, there's backlash. And if they clash with Donald Trump, well, they're not really seeing an end to this resolution. Donald Trump said in his acceptance speech for the nomination a few nights ago that if these leaders, local or governors and mayors and such, if they would allow for the federal government to help them, they would take out these protests in a matter of hours. I mean, nobody wants the National Guard coming through their cities. I know here in Los Angeles, we had to have that happen in the aftermath of the Floyd protests. Nobody wants that, but at the same time, nobody wants senseless deaths like this one. Nobody wants, shattered businesses, especially in the aftermath of COVID, when so many people are suffering economically and otherwise. So, I think it really behooves these leaders to put aside their partisan politics, and say, we want to make this peaceful. We want to put an end to the violence, to the protests. And this is where we live. At the end of the day, it's where you live. You have to love your city, your state, your country. And we're just not seeing that right now.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Now, the unrest that we've seen over the past week in Wisconsin and now Portland prompted the president last week to tweet about sending federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha. And he quoted, so in his tweet, he said, to restore law and order. So has this happened, Lisa? And has the National Guard presence been effective?
No, because he's been told that it will make things worse. Exactly what we just said. It's just this kind of resistance to get along with the man sitting in the White House. What are you going to get? A pat on the back by the lefties? It's a time that all leaders came together, left, right, center, and said, we want to restore peace in this country. When Biden came out today and said, I want to make a speech, and the only thing he wanted to do is critique the way that President Trump is handling the protests across the country. And when you think about that, you're like, this guy is running for office as well. Why can't he say, I stand in solidarity with President Trump, and left, right, and center, we want to put an end to the violence, because regardless of your political color, you don't want this country to face these kinds of violence. You don't want people to die, because we all respect each other. Regardless of our political affiliation.
Now, Lisa, some residents in Kenosha say that Trump's visit on Tuesday is all about his reelection, not about healing the community. Others are going even further and say that they're worried Trump's visit may stir more emotions and cause more violence and destruction in the city after several days of peace. So he is scheduled to tour that area. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, the resistance has gone so far to say, well, this is because of his reelection, of course, because anything he does other than sit home until election day will be seen as, working towards the election. You got to look at his record for the past 4 years. What has he done? Has he gone to the scene of hurricanes and, things like that? And he has. I mean, it's unfair to say that he's doing this to be reelected. Just like it'd be unfair to say, Biden or Kamala Harris come out with a statement about something because they want to get elected. Of course, that's what they're trying to do. But the president has already been elected. He's already had a track record of showing support, showing solidarity, giving money, coming up with all of these financial, kind of bailouts for the American people during this time of coronavirus. So, it's unfair to say that this is just for the visuals. Again, it behooves us all as a nation to work together. I mean, he's going to come. Will it stir more violence? Perhaps. But you know what? He's the president of the United States, and he, regardless, represents us all. It doesn't matter what political party you affiliate with. But yeah, we're counting down the days to election day, as you can imagine. I mean, who knows what the future holds and what it'll be like the day after election day, where, everything is so politicized here, from the reaction to COVID, from the response, from the vaccine. No one can believe anything anymore. And
I
it's
know.
Really unfair.
And the way that 2020 is going, it's like anything is possible at this point, right?
Exactly.
Now, initially, speaking of Wisconsin, initially the media was reporting that Blake was unarmed, but then later it's been determined that he was actually, in fact, armed with a knife. Now, should the media still be treating him like a victim? Because that seems to be what's been happening.
Yeah, 2020 is not the year of facts. It's the year of emotion. And the DOJ came out over the weekend and said, in fact, he was reaching, not only had the weapon, but he was reaching for it at the time that this happened. Look, we can have the conversation that maybe it was excessive use of force. He didn't have to be shot 7 times, but the police officer did need to restrain him. He's not a saint, just like Floyd wasn't a saint, but they're painted out to be that because they represent a very literally black and white picture of what happened. Look, the way that you have people running out and saying defund the police, it would be equivalent to saying defund the hospitals if I saw a bad doctor. Are there bad policemen? Yes. Do they take advantage of the role? Yes. Are there wonderful policemen? More than the bad ones. Many more than the bad ones. And they're not talked about and they're not celebrated. And, you know, ever since this has happened, I walk the streets and if I see a police officer, I say, thank you for your service, because more chances than not, that officer has dedicated his life to doing good and has done good. And you know, we're just living on emotion right now. As you said, if the details of the case change, the investigation brings out new evidence, people aren't willing to listen to it, because right now we're all into proving that the police are bad. There's racism in this country and we are just bad, bad, bad. From professional athletes to celebrities to the mainstream media, that is their agenda. And you know, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because we live in an exceptional nation that does exceptional things and treats its people exceptionally well for the most part. And those few bad examples are taken and highlighted, and now we are just riding on that fury, and it's really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. So let's turn our attention now to another major topic of 2020, which is coronavirus. So the Centers for Disease Control is facing criticism for changing its guideline recently on who should get tested for COVID-19. They're suggesting that people who have been exposed to the virus but are asymptomatic may not need to be tested after all. But these people are also most likely to spread the virus. So does it make sense to limit who gets tested?
Yeah, this is interesting. The CDC also has come out with some new statistics about how many people actually had the virus and how many of them were actually healthy individuals before the fact, meaning, you know, if they were elderly or had, you know, a list of risky preconditions. And, you know, that the statistic comes down to such a low number, then you ask the question, did it require this shutdown? Did it require us to flatten our economy, you know, around the world? But we're talking here in the United States. When we talk about the CDC, they keep moving the goalposts, and then you really begin to wonder, what am I being told? Am I being lied to? You know, are these political points? Are they trying to raise the number of patients who have died from COVID, or are they trying to reduce the number? Because for both of those scenarios, there would be a political point behind it, depending on which side you're on. Again, very alarming that the institutions that are supposed to protect us and tell us the truth and give us guidelines, particularly to help us navigate through such an uncertain time, are betraying us, are lying to us, are moving the goalposts to a point where we don't have the faith in them that we should have.
Wow. So the CDC also proposed guidelines for distributing a coronavirus vaccine in the U.S. if one is approved for public use. So they've prioritized healthcare workers and essential personnel and vulnerable Americans, such as elderly, being the first to get it. But there are experts who say that poor and minority communities should also be included in this group. What is your take on this, Lisa?
Again, it comes down to, you know, of course, it's because, you know, we are elitists and we are racist. So that's why we chose the healthcare workers to get the vaccine first, not because they're, you know, on the front line of this and are risking their lives day in and day out to fight this vaccine and to help others and help not spread this. This is an asinine argument, and of course, you know, we're having it because it's 2020. You know, anything that is done is questioned and criticized, and you know, what's the right answer? Obviously, health should get this, and then, you know, in order of minority communities, ironically, were last to get this. They called it the rich man's virus first, here in the United States, at least. I can tell you, they call it the rich man's virus first, and then slowly it trickled into the minority communities, and then they said it spread quickly in the minority communities because they weren't being as careful. They were going to work, they were taking public transportation, they were congregating. They either didn't speak English and didn't know the proper guidelines, or they were, again, congregating and taking public transportation. So it was, you know, it spread pretty quickly there. But this in no means is, you know, an issue of racism or elitism or anything else.
Interesting.
Please, 2020.
Yeah. Interesting. So now this is all, of course, dependent on if a vaccine is available, and there seems to be a worldwide race going on to be the first to produce one. I know Canada is now talking about signing agreements with 4 U.S. drug companies to produce one. So, Lisa, how soon could we see a vaccine?
Well, the FDA came out over the last 24 hours and said they would basically bypass the third round. So basically, when a vaccine wants to be released into the public, there are 3 trials. So many people on the front lines of this. As you said, there are major drug companies here in the U.S. I know Canada is teaming up with them as well. I know that Israel is on the front line. They have shown a lot of promise with a few of their medical technologies. But the bottom line, again, goes to the conversation as to, do people feel safe jumping on the bandwagon and saying, sign me up for that vaccine? I know many people that I speak to do not want to be injected with any foreign agent, especially right now, particularly since we don't know much about coronavirus. We don't know the long-term implications of the virus. And again, it's 2020, so we'd rather be cautious than anything else.
100%. And with that, we are out of time. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jeanette.
It's a case that's been making headlines for over 8 months. A Lethbridge man who had been living in Calgary went missing last November. The last place 26-year-old Marshall Iwasa was known to be was here in Lethbridge in the early morning hours of Monday, November the 18th. A week later, his truck was found torched in the back country near Pemberton, British Columbia, but Marshall has never been found. Marshall's case has been classified simply as a missing persons case, but his family feels that this could be something else. With me now is Marshall's sister, Paige Fogan. Thank you so much, Paige, for being here today. We really appreciate it. I know it's a difficult case to talk about. So, police say that an examination of Marshall's truck in the area at the time offered no evidence that there was any criminal activity or that Marshall had ever been there. But you think maybe something different is going on there, right?
Yeah, that's something that we've been kind of pushing for since the beginning, is that, we've never really seen any concrete proof that Marshall was up there, drove his truck up there, or went there on his own choice. Since the investigations continued and since we've went to the truck site, it kind of fueled our fire of pushing and saying, no, we really don't believe he went up there. The location was so difficult to get to and was so challenging even for our vehicles to get up there, that we really don't believe that he drove his own truck there on his own choice.
Right. Okay, so let's back up for a minute. You and your family recently had the opportunity for the very first time, all of you together, to travel to BC, to travel to the area where the truck is and see the truck for the first time. Describe that for me. Describe the area.
First, the drive there was so challenging. We had GPSed it, and even just to get to Pemberton was supposed to be about 13 hours. But we ran into some problems with the weather and the roads, and we ended up taking about 30 hours for us to drive there. So it was a lot longer than we had even originally anticipated. And that was we were the shortest ones. A couple of my other cousins, they took about 40 hours to get there just due to road delays, traffic backlogs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was
and
really...
this is summertime weather, right?
Yeah, and this is in good weather.
Yeah.
So that was challenging. And then once we got there to Pemberton, a group had reached out to us for Low BC to offer to take our family actually up to the truck site because from our knowledge of it, you'd need 4x4s or ATVs to actually get up there to where the truck was found. Okay. So they came and they took us up there, and even for them, they had to stop at a certain place, let the air out of their tires to help their vehicles be able to crawl over the rocks better.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is a skilled 4x4 group that offered their services to us. So, we were able to go up in their vehicles to get to the truck site. It was, for me, going and actually driving through there was quite an experience, and I think my family, a lot of them feel the same. Mm-hmm. There are spots where we were going over quite deep holes and rocks and rivers at one point.
Crossing through water and all kinds of rough terrain, right?
Very, very challenging. And, that solidified it for me essentially that I don't believe Marshall would have taken his truck up there, not on his own choice, if he ever was even up there.
Okay. Now, police were saying in their initial investigation that they think no one was there except for Marshall. So, at what point do they classify it as criminal?
That's a good question and something that we've been trying to figure out since the beginning. there are items up there that I've identified that are not Marshall's. And so that's frustrating, you know, for us to hear that they don't believe anyone else was up there, because there are items that are definitely not Marshall's that were at the scene. And so that's something that we've been pushing for, of like, we don't think he was ever up there by himself, or maybe even not ever up there. They were able to get into his financial records and found that, you know, nothing significant was found. That includes no gas stops to get his vehicle there, because his truck would have taken a lot of fuel to get there. Yeah. I know for us, we stopped at least 3 times just to get gas. Yeah. And so like for that, you know, I don't believe that he was ever up there, either by his choice or on his own.
Okay. Now, Marshall was an avid outdoorsman, right? And he did enjoy hiking. Are you, like, how do you know for sure that he wasn't familiar with the area?
That's just through knowing him and talking to his friends and knowing like them and their experiences with him. For me, all of our hikes have been either in Hawaii or in Alberta, and a little bit in Montana, where we always have gone camping in the summer as children growing up. Right. So for us, those are our main areas that we go hiking. And then even talking with his friends, all of their hikes were in Alberta and never really in BC. He's not familiar with there. And all of the hikes that he's done, he usually goes with friends and family. Right. Like, he's never really done these hikes on his own. So he's not like a solo hiker. So that's, all of those are indicators for us that like he didn't go there. He didn't know that place.
Right. Now, you were saying there were items found near the truck that you didn't identify as Marshall's. Were they fresh items? Like, how, like, do you think they were there the whole time, or did they possibly somebody dumped them? Because it's the bottom of a trailhead, right? Do I have that correct? There's the hiking trail.
Yeah, and then you would hike up to the hut. So the way that I know those items aren't his is I identified them from the first set of photos from the hikers that found the truck. And then since then, every time I do get the opportunities to see some photos or see some items that were found at the site, either by the hikers or by police, I've still identified items that I don't believe are his each time. And so the difficult part is that I've never actually been able to go through all of the items that were found at the truck site. So we've never fully been able to see everything that was there and go through them.
Initially, the ones that RCMP found. Yeah.
Everything, yeah. We've never been able to go through those.
Right, because they took them in as evidence, right? Okay, well, I guess that makes sense. Now, there were some items that have not been found that are pretty important personal items, right? You were mentioning.
Yeah, we've still never been able to find his wallet, his license, his backpack, his most recent cell phone, his most recent laptop that he was using from SAIT. So all of those items have never been accounted for. Things that he needed, like contact solution, the cases, those have never been found either.
Right, real personal items. Now, last time I had Cassie in here, this was a few months back, we talked about how at the time police still weren't able to access, I think because of the Missing Persons Act, right? There's a privacy issue with accessing bank records and phone records, but I think since then, it's changed a little bit. They've been able to get in.
Yeah, so what we've been told by the investigator is that they were able to access a little bit of his bank records and look a little bit further back, not just the last transaction. But from there was nothing significant found, including no gas stops along the way from Calgary to Lethbridge or from Lethbridge to Pemberton.
Right, which seems impossible, right?
Which is impossible on his truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's just so puzzling is how could there not be any surveillance anywhere between here and there?
Yep, that's been something that's been really frustrating from the get-go, is not having any footage or any concrete evidence that he was ever there or on the way there or anything like that. So we've never got any footage. And I think, you know, for us, that's been one thing that we've been trying to push for, is for this to be investigated as a criminal case so that we can get access to more information. Because like you mentioned, when Cassie was here, there was a lot of barriers with the Missing Persons Act in trying to get historical data of Marshall's movements prior to his disappearance. And I think that's something that we're still continuing to push for, is to get those answers and get that information. You know, and for me, one of the biggest things would be this fire investigation that, you know, just happened.
Yeah, no results yet, right?
Yeah, from what I've been told, they're still waiting on the fire investigator report, which is a month now, just over a month from when they were up there. and a full almost 9 months since Marshall went missing. So, you know, I've wanted a fire investigator up there since day one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And for them to just have one, I mean, I'm happy that one went up there when they did the final search that they just completed. But, you know, it's a little bit late and we're still waiting for that report because, you know, if it's considered arson, you know, that's criminal.
Right.
And so that I'm hoping that we could then get it pushed into a criminal case, criminal investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems really strange that they would wait that long. Is there any idea why? I mean, to me, it seems like anybody could go up there and tamper with evidence, right?
And that was our concern from the beginning of having the trucks still being out there, is that it wasn't a controlled site, right? And that was hard having that, but yeah, we definitely would have, you know, wanted something as soon as possible, and I really don't have an answer as to exactly why this report wasn't done in the beginning.
Right, yes, it must be very frustrating. Now, you up until recently were living in Hawaii, so you were trying to do all this from overseas, essentially. You've made a few trips back to Lethbridge. On one of those, I believe you went through the storage room, which is essentially the last place that we know Marshall to have been, right, on that morning of November 18th. So he left your mom's house on November 17th, late in the evening, right? Yep. Went to the storage room, and no idea what he was needing or looking for?
No, I think that's something that has kind of puzzled us too,
Yeah.
Even as his family. We went through the unit. First, while I was in Hawaii, the police went through the unit. And then when I came back, I went through the unit again with police. We didn't find anything significant or missing. Interesting though, we did find all of our camping gear. Right. So, you know, if Marshall had been wanting to go camping or do some hiking or backpacking on his own, all of our gear was in our unit together. Yeah, and the other important fact is that the gear that you need to go backpacking overnight, if you're carrying all your stuff in, is very different than the gear that you take when you just drive up to a campsite and pull it out of your car. Right. It's different weights, it's different, packed differently, different sizes. And so we don't own any of that gear. Marshall's never owned day or overnight backpacking trip gear. Yeah, that you carry your stuff in. Yeah. He's never owned that. But all of our car camping gear is in our storage unit. So either way, if you look at it, of he was going to go hiking there overnight by himself, which is kind of what you would need to go up to the hut, he doesn't own that material. And if it was like that he was just going to camp with his regular things, all of those are in our storage unit.
Right. Interesting. Another thing that's been a big mystery sort of shrouding this is finding out that he wasn't enrolled in school like you guys originally thought. Cassie and I talked about this a few months back as well, that, you know, it was kind of a surprise, but it wasn't like a big shock. Nobody thought anything really of it. But I guess my question was, have you ever found out what Marshall was doing in September, October, and November if he wasn't in school? Nobody's ever come forward and said, hey, he was working for us, or no T4s were ever sent?
No, we've never received any information of Marshall working somewhere else or doing something different. One of the things that we did know, though, is in the summertime, he had been volunteering. He kind of described it as like volunteering for experience. So he was getting experience in the field he wanted to go into. I didn't know the name of the company that he was doing that for, though, but it was all remote. And so he had described for me some of the kind of like help desk activities he had been doing or learning from this company. So we've never heard from them, and that's something that he definitely could have continued doing in September, October. We also know that he had been working on a game online, and he had been working on that. He had put about 800 hours into it. Yes, and he had been working on it the morning that he went down to Lethbridge as well. So on the 17th.
Yeah, and when you went through the apartment, nothing jumped out at you. It didn't look like somebody that wasn't planning on ever coming back, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
His stuff was all there. It was all left in, you know, normal condition.
What do you think happened to Marshall in your heart of hearts?
You know, that's something I ask myself every day. Like, there is not a time that goes by where I don't kind of think about it and flip-flop on what I think happened. You know, whether something happened unintentionally or he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, I really don't know. I've thought about every single scenario and, you know, thought about them all the time. But I think for me, one of the things that we're trying to do is kind of stick with what we know and what we've been crossing off the list. So at this point, I can confidently say, like, I don't believe that he went up there on his own choice, or maybe was never even up there. And so that's why I feel strongly that we should start looking into different locations and different things that might have happened to him, and primarily push this into a criminal case.
Right. Yeah, I wonder what it would take to do that.
Yeah, that's something that we're still trying to explore and figure out, because I think this realm of missing persons is so new to us, and every case is so unique. So we're still trying to figure it out of, what will it take? Because at this point, he's been missing for so long. There's been no activity. His vehicle's been found in a remote area that he's not familiar with. It's been completely burnt out. And maybe if they get the fire investigation report and it's arson, then we can get that push into criminal.
How did it feel going back to that spot and seeing his truck? Was it like closure for you, or did it open up more questions than answers?
It really opened up a lot of questions with the items that were found there, and just getting up to the truck site really made us be like, our family question more what could have happened to Marshall.
Right. Okay. Well, I know there's still missing posters out there and whatnot. What would you like to say to anybody who might have any information?
I think that's the biggest thing is, now that we're moving into summer and people are going to be out and about, just asking if you need any posters, or if you're heading out anywhere, if you can put up posters, that would be awesome. Sharing our information online, all of that's so helpful in spreading awareness and keeping some focus on Marshall and that he's still missing, and we're still looking for answers. And, we really won't stop until we have answers to what happened. And so, any way that people can help, sharing online is always helpful. Joining our Find Marshall Iwasa Facebook group. That's where we share all of our information and our updates. And it's actually our family that's running it. So, if people are asking questions, it's usually myself or one of my family members that's actually replying to them. So it's a good platform for us to communicate with the public, and it's been so helpful to have, because we've been able to get really great ideas from the public that are throwing their ideas, their thoughts out to us. People that are familiar with Pemberton and the Brian Waddington Hut reached out to us and said, hey, it must have been someone that knew this area that got up there, because it's really difficult. And all of that has been so helpful to us. Yeah. So, anything people can do to help would be really appreciated.
Definitely. And it's in the hands of the Lethbridge Police Service now. So definitely call Crime Stoppers, call LPS.
If you have any tips, definitely reach 100%. Out to police.
Paige, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know this is such a difficult time for you and your family, but we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, and helping us keep the awareness of Marshall out there. It's so critical. Thank you. That is Paige Fogan, a sister to Marshall Iwasa, who has been missing since last November. My name's Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thank you for watching.